All right, so we are on. Hello, everyone. People are still joining us for today's session AMA. So I'm just gonna wait for a few seconds, extra seconds for everyone to get adjusted so we can get started. In the meantime, I just want to read a little bit of introduce you guys, our host today. I'll be the moderator. So I'm Pedro, the head of growth at Growth Hackers, and I'll be moderating today's chat and AMA session with Chiedo John. So Chiedo John started out as a web developer. He's climbed the ladder at GitHub, building and leading successful product growth team. Just this January, a few months ago, he took the exciting leap to Director of Growth, where he's now focused on expanding GitHub's reach through out-of-product experiences like marketing pages, subdomain, and acquisition flows. But not only that, he's not only, as it seems like it's an easy job, but it's no, Kid still has time to be a founder himself. So he's helping to build a 1,000 company every year through his own through his own company called Rocktown. Am I getting this right, kiddo? Welcome
Yeah, you're
aboard.
getting it right. Loving it.
All
Glad
right.
to be here.
Yeah, awesome to have you. So thanks for taking the time to chat with us today. We are gonna be addressing growth for so many different angles. So I'm gonna start with a few questions from the community members, starting out with Akshay Garg. So his question is, how did you grow in your growth career? I would like to know your career trajectory, starting from being a beginner up to the point where you became director of growth of one of the largest companies in the world. So I'm also super curious to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. And like there's the answer I want to give, which is like, follow these 10 steps and like here's how you do it. But then the reality is it really started before I arrived at GitHub. So I started a company back in 2012. And it was a web development company where I was wearing all sorts of hats. When you start a company, you wear the marketing hat, you wear the sales hat. You're initially doing accounting, you get a lot of it wrong, but you try. You hire people and you do all these things and do all these experiments, not like clean A/B test experiments, but you're trying all these things to see what works. And so before I even got to GitHub, I had all this understanding of business and of people, psychology, sales, and how you get something from start to finish that really helped me. Then I came to GitHub and built multiple teams. So when I joined GitHub, I joined as an engineering manager. So I was coming from running my own company, which wasn't huge, right? It was 20 people at its height. And so coming to GitHub, like I had no idea how to operate at a company like 3,000 plus scale. So I started with something I knew I could do really well, which was manage and build an engineering team. I've always been a guy who could start things. And so built the Docs engineering team. It was 2 people when I got there, like 8 when I left, and moved it to React and did all these sorts of kind of improvements with the amazing team, of course. I just managed the people and hired them. And then got promoted to a director of engineering role over the marketing and growth organization. So the growth organization was kind of like it had been built by some other amazing folks before I got there. The marketing engineering team was 2 people once again, and I had to kind of like make the case to like fully fund it so we could support the rest of the company. And so built that team, got an engineering manager in place, and got that team healthy. And then during that time, things got like mature-ish, right? Like there's always like opportunity for more growth, and I started just getting curious about the product management space. And so I asked my manager at GitHub if I could do another job without getting paid any extra money. Right? So it's not like a great sales pitch to most employees, but like it was a great sales pitch to like my manager's manager. He's like, "Wait a second, so you're telling me you want to like do 2 jobs for GitHub and get paid the same thing?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Go for it." So what that gave me though is an opportunity. And I had to be okay. Going back to ground zero was I was the director of engineering of the marketing growth org, and at the same time I was a product manager intern under who's now the chief product officer of GitHub, and just like soaking in product management best practices from him, helping to grow GitHub projects focused on their insights feature. And so through that, I learned a lot about good product management hands-on to get a lot of the theory in my head into practice.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of land the plane in a second. So that kind of prepared me for the opportunity. And then later on in the year, once again, I'm director of engineering. The product org got access to something called Reforge, where they got credits. It's really expensive. I heard great things. So I was like, okay, can I have that? They hooked it up. And so most people did one course on Reforge. I did 12 over like 3 months. Because I was just thinking like, hey, like this is amazing. I want to soak it up. Like I want to be ready for the opportunity. I want to get into growth in the future. I don't know how to get there, but when the opportunity comes, I want to be ready. So I blasted through as many courses as possible. And then at the end of the year, an opportunity arose. We had our VP of marketing leave, our director of revenue marketing leave. We had some ambitious goals, and I was in a position where I had seen a lot of the opportunities, and I was one of the guys who was left with a lot of this knowledge and understanding of how a lot of the projects and organization function. And I said, hey, can I do this thing? And they're like, well, heck yeah, right? And so then I got this role as director of growth in January, and it's been a rocket ship ever since.
Yeah, by January, it seems to me like you were the best fit, or the person who was best positioned to actually take over the growth position. Is it correct to say that, like, from your opinion, is it correct to say that like growth person does need to be kind of a generalist in some sense, having an understanding of basically how the entire machine work, not only the product but also marketing functions, sales functions, and everything else? Is it like, am I getting this right?
Yeah, absolutely. In my opinion, I mean, right now, for example, so yeah, for anybody who's like talked to folks about this, you get the role, you have no team, you have no actual authority, and you're asked what your goals are, but you don't know the baselines. And
Yeah,
so you have to be able to do a lot of things. You have to figure out how to win folks over so you can like borrow some folks.
yeah,
You don't have anyone reporting to you, so it's really all relationships. You don't have any data analyst, so you need to try and find someone who can help you, right? And or do a lot yourself. So like right now, like the hats I'm like some part of the day I'm like writing queries and figuring out how to like analyze A/B tests. The other part of the day, like I'm like doing ad hoc analysis in our data warehouse, and then I'm like running the engineering backlog as the product manager, and then like hopping into conversations with VPs about strategy, while also
yeah.
coming up with goals while trying to meet goals we don't have yet. It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's all over the place. Yeah, and but that's also kind of like the fun part of it, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
You're always doing something different. It's almost never the same. And like that remind me of like one other AMA that we did. I can't recall exactly who that was, but if I'm not mistaken, it was from Automatic, the head of growth at Automatic. And he mentions that like one of the most underrated skill sets of a growth professional is that like knowing how to like how to navigate internal bureaucracies and politics, knowing the right people for you to touch whenever you need, whenever like where to go for support whenever you have a challenge, or you'll find a roadblock. So yeah, it's nice to hear kind of like the same opinion in a different way.
Oh yeah, I mean that's so true. And that's partly why having been at GitHub for 4 years before moving to this role helped so
Yeah,
much, right? Today, like a lot of people are at a company for like 2 years or 3 years. So like I'm like ancient. I've got like a bunch of knowledge about like how things work at the company, which allow me to do things faster. Because when you're leading growth, you need to be able to move fast. You
yeah,
can't move fast if you don't understand how the bureaucracy works. You'll get stuck at red tape. So that helps a lot. Then I've also got the benefit of we have another head of growth at GitHub, who's in the product org, who I've got to learn from a lot, like a lot and a lot. And so I've been able to see what she's done in the past, what's been successful, where she's
yeah,
run into blockers. So also like just building on what other people do and like
yeah.
learning from like the great work other people have done.
Awesome, man. And you mentioned that like throughout up until the point where you landed in the growth position, you're kind of an expert in building teams, right? Or you
Yeah.
have done it like multiple times. Are you still doing that? Like, do you guys have opposition? How is that right now?
Yeah, when I look back at like my 4 years at GitHub, the times where I've had most success was where I was building kind of a new thing. So
Yeah,
taking the docs engineering team from like 2 folks to like 8, and now having kind of more coverage over more of our code base and more of our areas and more of the GitHub product set. Building the marketing engineering team from a place where we were more or less functioning like a marketing agency for the rest of the company to like building a CMS and a platform and a roadmap. Building an internal automation suite for the company to improve reporting and automation.
Yeah.
And now kind of building the growth team. So yes, absolutely am hiring. I just got the go signal as of yesterday night. Actually, it was great timing. More or less, I need to try and hire like 10 people in 10 days, which is nuts. So I'm hiring 2 growth product managers. I'm hiring 8 engineers, 11 people, and a data analyst. So if anyone is interested, please hit me up on LinkedIn, or I'll put my email in the chat here. Here, I'll put it in the private chat. You can share it with folks. It's Chiedo@github.com. We want to move fast. We need to move fast. So folks who like to move fast, please hit me up.
Amazing opportunity. Yeah, I love it. All right. And taking the leap to the next questions, I would love to hear from you a little bit more about your daily routine and current attributions at GitHub. Things like what are your team goals? How many people do you have on those growth roles? And is that structure? Is that a mixed structure? Is it an independent team, a cross-functional one? I would love to get like an inside view about how things actually play out at GitHub.
Yeah. So it's crazy. So we're focused on Copilot right now. So growing Copilot, the self-serve motion. That's what I can say about that. They're more specific goals. I won't be too specific there. But how are the teams structured? So right now, and this is why it goes back to the benefits of being here so long and having all these relationships around the company. Because right now I have no one reporting to me, right? And so I've more or less kind of like had to like lead through influence and just like belief and relationship. They're like, hey, help me with this thing. I'm like, hey, put like these goals on your roadmap, like. And so I have some amazing collaborations with the design organization, some great people over there that I've worked with the past few years. When I came on with this vision, said like, hey, like, here's what I want to do. Here's what I've seen y'all doing. Here's where I think they overlap. Can we work together? And the support's been absolutely phenomenal. Same with the engineering org, where the team that I actually used to manage, I was able to work with that engineering manager and say like, hey, we have like this half of the team where they lack kind of like this guidance on their roadmap and goals and clarity because they just finished some like big migrations of systems. Like, hey, what do we do next? It's like, I can give them an answer there. Like, if you're willing to come along for this ride to grow the GitHub self-serve business. And so right now the team is a bunch of teams cross-functionally. Also have a great product manager. He's kind of I don't even know what to call him. Like, he's like half product manager, like half like a data specialist. Been learning so much from him about like how to think about A/B tests and analysis and sample size and all these things that, I wouldn't have been able to articulate before. And then we have part capacity from an amazing data analyst. And just overall, like the way we've been doing everything so far is with folks from other teams who've just been absolutely amazing to collaborate with. And so now, as I hire out this team, we're going to continue those collaborations, but give them a little bit more oomph so we can do more.
All right. So right now, you are the only person, like, please correct me if I'm wrong. You're the only fully dedicated person to growth, but that's about to change the next 10 days. You're going to have people reporting to you. But most of the things that get done is through cross-collaboration projects with other areas. So for that to happen, I'm guessing there is a pretty strong culture of cross-functional collaboration inside of GitHub. And you mentioned that even prior that you assumed that position, you guys already like previously had a head of growth or a director of growth. So the culture inside of GitHub actually incentivizes this kind of like risk-taking approach, moving target, always chasing something new, and simply like taking risks through an experimentation process. Am I getting this right?
Yeah, I think every like healthy company they're like two kinds of problems. They're like problems where you solve it with maturity, and they're problems where you solve it with kind of like speed, right? And kind of building something new, kind of like action 0 to 1. And so we have a lot of folks at GitHub who are amazing at like the maturity problem. How do we keep GitHub up? How do we keep the customers happy? How do we make sure we build the right features? So like, I'm not that guy, right? Like, I'm the guy who starts things new from like 0 to 1. And so the culture is great for both of those things, kind of depending on where you sit and like if you know the way to work your way around the org. So absolutely.
Love it. And you mentioned that you changed from like kind of like letting product-led growth to the director of growth. in your daily routine or in your goals, what really changed aside from the job title?
Yeah. So before I was director of engineering of the growth team and the marketing team, so marketing product led growth team. And so when I was in that role, the growth team was actually like really darn mature. Like those folks were amazing. Like I still learn from those folks. Like as I'm doing this role, like I hit them up and I'm like, hey, like how do I think about X, Y, and Z? They're like absolutely phenomenal, world class. And so
Okay.
in that role, I was actually almost all focused on marketing because the
Mhm.
marketing team was so much newer and so much wider of a problem space. So the growth team was able, we did growth engineering manager. There were like 4 product managers, a director of growth. And so those folks were able to kind of work more independently, right? On very clear goals. On the marketing engineering side, we have like I don't know, like 50, 100 stakeholders who all want
Yeah.
us to do X thing now. So we really had to think strategically about like how do we take all these people's needs and all these people's interests and how do we create a roadmap that solves that and gets us to meet our goals at the same time. So it was a much bigger kind of like more complex problem from a people perspective with like less clear goals. So I really
Yeah.
had to lean in on that front. So I was almost entirely working on the marketing and just like building the team, helping to build the roadmap. I'm getting the structure. And now my goals have shifted to kind of revenue and growth goals. So
Yeah.
before it was like, how do we support others? Now it's like, how do we drive, these goals and get support? So I'm like, I'm on the other
Yeah.
side now. And I'm like, oh man, this is what it was like to work with me back then.
Seems like you went to the back end, from the front end to the back end.
Yeah.
So, of some type. Yeah, and since we were talking about marketing, I'm gonna get to Jessica Simmons question. Can you share any specific example of how you successfully leverage a subdomain or a marketing page to drive user acquisition at GitHub? And did you learn anything specific from that experience?
Yeah. Like I want to give you an answer like that's like real clear of lots of things. But my first, like I started in January. So these first few months, it's been like getting the people, getting support, building the team, getting the data in place, like to actually capture the data, figure out where the data is, figure out what our goals are. So, and then we ran a few A/B tests. So A/B tests is what we'll use for a lot of that. We ran a few A/B tests, did a few enhancements, and then we realized that we misshipped our A/B tests when we went to go look at the data. We had like missed a couple of flags, and of course that takes like 2 weeks at a time with our level of traffic. So we actually have to rerun those things to see what the insight would be. We preliminarily have some results on an A/B test where we did something simple. We just played around with like the pricing, how we communicated pricing on the Copilot page, and we shipped that. I think reshipped it roughly 8 days ago. And like I took a peek. I shouldn't have, but I took a peek early just to see how it was doing. And like it looks like we pretty drastically improved Copilot business signups through that change. And I can't actually articulate as well as I'd like to, like the changes we made to the pricing tables. It was like in large partnership with our design partners. But right now the results look promising. So we're going to do lots of A/B tests to drive kind of like those incremental improvements, and then also do just like enhancements where we take the feedback we get from user research and conversations and do
Great.
things like, yeah, exactly. Like one of the things people have requested was the ability to find GitHub's features more easily when you're on the marketing site. And there was this
Yeah.
like weird thing where like we just didn't have those pages in the search bar. Like the search bar would only take you into the core product to see like repos. So we
Right.
added that. We're still waiting to get those results interpreted. And this is part of why we're hiring a data analyst. Our bottleneck is we're able to ship things, but then we can't, like, we don't have like the time to like interpret them. And if you
Yeah.
can't interpret, you can't learn. But it's exciting and more to come.
Yeah, people used to say that like the worst kind of result that you get is the inconclusive one. You
I
either
know.
get like it's best to not that for the experiment not to work than to get an inconclusive one, right?
I know. I mean, and it got even worse than that is we ship an experiment and the result we get is that like we forgot to click a button. So like it didn't collect most of the traffic. Like that's happened to us. But I told the team, I was like, hey, like we're all doing this for the first time. And like we still learned. Like before we did this, we were a team who didn't know how to set
Yeah,
this up. And now we're a team who does. And so like, even though it may seem like we had like major miss, we missed like 4 weeks worth of progress. We've learned
yeah.
something, and going into this next quarter, like we're not going to make that same mistake.
Yeah, I guess like at the end of the day, that should be the main goal. I know that's hard to measure like learnings,
I know.
but even like what comes after the result is the learning phase. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that's pretty much it. And I'm gonna like go off tracks a little bit here from the script, from the question from the community, and ask one question myself, which is like one struggle that I commonly see like companies larger than 1,000, 3,000 employees, like a current challenge that they have is how to promote their learnings. So you guys are running multiple tests at the same time, learning a lot of things. But if it's something that it's retained only inside the growth bubble,
Yeah.
it's a knowledge like that it's not accessible to everyone. So is there any specific tip or any specific process that you guys go through to actually make sure that everyone is learning throughout the experiments that the growth team is running?
No, there isn't. There should be.
Okay.
Right now we're still super scrappy. So more or less our progress is like post it on Slack, do a
Yeah.
video. And then so we post that when we like launch an A/B test or an enhancement or some sort of kind of like bet we're making. And then the plan is that we haven't done yet, as we're still waiting to interpret the results, is to go back to those things and share them and share the results, share the findings. And then like where do we put those learnings kind of like long term? I'm actually not sure yet, but it will probably be something with the user research team. We have an amazing user research team who does a fantastic job sharing learnings. And we can either try and solve that problem of like distribution of knowledge ourselves or just like tap into the amazing work they're already doing. So right now, the plan is to like hit up user research as we get insights and say like, hey, how do we disseminate this information to the rest of the company? And I think if we do that, borrowing rather than kind of re-implementing will be the better solution.
Awesome. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think like that you kind of create a flywheel where people get constantly reminded that they can suggest ideas, they can somehow participate, give opinions, and you get more support,
Yeah.
and it's like tends to flow in the right direction by that as a result of that. Cool. I got one from Maya Gomez, which is kind of like, I'm guessing, like, I think I already know the answer based on your previous answers, but do you think that product and marketing growth teams should be managed separately or should they stay together?
Yeah. I mean, we have lots of conversations about this often. Like so I've read like books on like org design because this is like the deep philosophical like thing
Yeah.
that keeps me up at night, and it seems like I'm dodging the question. But my thought process is, you have teams organized based on kind of like the strategies of the company within the environment that they're in, within the capabilities and talent that you have, right? So if you have a leader who can manage both of those groups of people, then like
Yeah.
heck yeah. But if you don't, and you have two leaders, one who's like a great product leader, one who's a great marketing leader, then you separate them. I think ideally they should share goals. So your goals should be aligned, and the leaders should be aligned. And like I don't really think about like, so the way I look at it is the org chart that's on paper that just tells you who reports to who and who's anybody's manager is. And then like the virtual org chart that tells you who works together and like who shares common goals. So I think about the world at these big companies within the framing of like virtual org charts, and where you have goals that are aligned. Because if you have those goals aligned and we're all aligned to the
Yeah.
same interests, it makes so much easier, which is how I've been able to like do this work cross-functionally. I tried to find like the intersection of like everybody's like independent goals and figure out like where do we have that Venn diagram where like the goal that my team has is right in the middle, because that makes it a million times easier to get support versus trying to sell somebody on a new thing. So yeah, like in an ideal world, they'd be like in the same part of the company. Like in the real world, it just depends on like who's in charge and like what skill sets they have. Because I've been an engineer, a product manager, a CEO, a business leader, I can hire, a super cross-functional team that reports up to me and like manage them all, right? Like
Yeah.
engineering, product, the data analyst. I have a gap around design. It's not a skill set that I've like built, but I have some partners who can help there.
Love it. I love this line of thought. And in my personal opinion, I feel like that it comes down to being able to operate cross-functionally, which is something that you guys excel at. So at the end of the day, it does come down like, of course, their ability to manage multiple teams, but it also like, even if it's a separated team, if they can work well together, then you might be able to have like two separated leaders, and that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. And it's like if folks aren't working well together, then like try and get them under the same leader, and it solves a lot of problems. So it's
Yeah.
definitely It's definitely harder when you have folks reporting to different leaders, because sometimes incentives and alignment and goals are just different, right? And
Yeah,
so when you can get those aligned, then like it's a piece of cake, doesn't matter. When you can't, just try and get it all under one roof.
love it. Yeah. So now we have one from Paul Rosen. How do you balance the need for a cohesive user experience across in-product and out-of-product touch points for developers on GitHub?
Yeah. So I think this goes back to the kind of we just talked about, like aligning to incentives and thinking about
Yeah,
end-to-end experiences. Um, just close collaboration with other folks. We've had times in the past where, the GitHub product, you ship your org chart, right? You have one team that's responsible for a sign up flow, another team that's responsible for an in product experience. One of the things we're doing, and one of the things I think growth does really well, is thinking about the end to end experience. Even
yeah,
though we might not own anything ourselves, I think that's a feature, not a bug, is because we're able to think, hey, our goal is how do we get a GitHub user to value as quickly as possible? And by value, I mean like value to them, which should translate to value to the company. So what does the GitHub user come to do, or the visitor come to do? Like, why are they at github.com? How do we tell that story on the front end? Then how do we drive them to a sign up process that works for them and like helps them get towards the job to be done? Once they show up to our front door, how do we help them be successful and like, show them where to sit, show them where the bathroom is, and show them how to use the product? And then like at that point, like how do we keep them engaged and show them what else there is to do? So I think having a growth team is partly how you solve that problem.
yeah.
If you're a user-centric company like GitHub is.
Love it, love it. And you mentioned that you guys are running multiple A/B testing right now. So one question from Jessica Simons is, how do you approach A/B testing and experimentation for out-of-product growth initiatives? So basically, I think it comes down like to the actual process of running an A/B test, where the idea come from, any specific tools that you guys might use, and how does that work? How does that play out?
Yeah, so I can tell you what we've done. It's always improving. I just learned how to analyze these tests like a couple weeks ago. So what we've done so far is it's helpful when you have lots of data that's been kind of like curated over time. So we have data from the user research team. We have data that one of our product managers has done as far as like user research and user interviews. We have a bunch of data in the data warehouse that is just kind of like waiting to be queried for insights. We have all sorts of dashboards that various teams have built. And so kind of the first thing is like, what do we see that seems suboptimal? And what do we think can improve it? So the first thing is like, what do we think seems suboptimal? And what do we think that seems suboptimal would help the business if we improved it? So to reframe it that way. And if we find that intersection where it's like, okay, let's just say like made up example. Let's say we have 1 million people coming to our features Copilot page every day, and only 1% of those folks get Copilot individual. It's like, that seems suboptimal. Why?
Yeah.
Right. And then like, that's what I bring to the team and say, like, we want to solve this problem. Now let's lead it like a brainstorming session with remote async first. So like, let's get on Figma. Like, how do we solve this problem? Let's like do it together, synchronously, and then push it out async and say, hey, for the rest of the week, just kind of like think about this problem. As you think about ways we might fix it, kind of propose them. And then we work with our data analyst and our product manager to come up with a kind of more finely tuned hypothesis. Like, okay, if we improve this, will it increase engagement? If we improve this, we believe that it will improve the click-through rate on these call to actions, right? And ultimate conversions. And then we ship, design the test, ship, make sure, there's some things we want to look at around like secondary metrics, but we're still just getting started. So I'm trying to get some wins first. But to keep it simple, like, what are you ultimately trying to drive? And then let's ship that and watch.
Perfect. Yeah, it makes total sense. And I love those brainstorm sessions when you do have like a clear goal to achieve and like how they're gonna get there. So it's a fun. Do you guys use any prioritization score whenever like after the brainstorm session you have a whole bunch of ideas that you might run? How do you prioritize what goes first?
Stack ranked. So right now, the team comes up with like kind of all the ideas, and folks put like stickers on the favorite ideas. And then I go through with another product manager and like the engineering manager. We say like, okay, like, where do we think we want to like try and make the bet first when we think about like difficulty and like size and like potential returns? So like this thing we think could yield like 100% increase in signups in a random number, but it will take us 3 months to implement. Like, let's not do that yet, right? Like, or maybe we do like one of those a quarter. But if we have like these like 20 things over here that we think could help drive like 100,000 more signups, whatever it may be, and each of those only takes like 2 days, right, to like actually engineer. It's like, okay, let's work on those. And we also need to think about things like sequencing. So we can't just run, 80 A/B tests on one page at the same time. It's like, this is valuable real estate, right? Like somebody's in the bathroom, someone else isn't in the bathroom. So you have to wait, right? There's a queue.
Yeah.
So we also think like, where else can we run experiments? And sometimes we can't just run like all our ideal experiments at the same time. We can like run one on the surface, and then that surface is used up until we kind of stop that A/B test and run the next one. So we've got to think about those things, but then it's kind of done by the leadership around product management, engineering management, and the like.
Yeah, makes sense. Make total sense. And one last question on that subject, like one last thought. So you mentioned like you previously mentioned that you were like kind of like a one-man band on the growth side, cross collaborating with everyone else.
Yeah.
How do you make like, so the brainstorm sessions, do you invite everyone in the company or anyone that you will eventually need collaboration with to get things executed? How does that work?
Yeah. So I actually have like a dream of wanting to invite everyone at the company. I'm like, that's the dream. But we need to get like more kind of like synthesis first and get our process right internally. So right now we have a virtual team called the ACT Squad, Acquisition and Experimentation Squad, that we've like used to brand that collaboration cross-functionally. So it goes back to what I was saying about like the org chart tells you who reports to who, and then goals tells you like who's working together on a team. And so I have like a group of folks cross-functionally, maybe like, I don't know, like 7 of us or something now. We've shared goals, and we have a Slack channel, and like that's where we post the kind of like call to contribute there, and it's public, so like anyone can stop by and like contribute as well. But like the target audience is the folks in that kind of virtual collaboration.
Makes total sense. I love it. It makes it easier if the goal is shared, right? Like you're and going after your own goal. Everyone is going after their own goals.
Yeah.
Sorry. And I'm gonna connect that with Vivian Garcia Cano question, which is how often do you experiment with new growth initiatives or marketing channels? And so another way to put her question, which I'm also curious about, is what is the balance between completely new initiatives that you guys are building out of from scratch or something that you're trying to improve the conversion rate, like an A/B test or something simply like trying to improve something, any specific element, or building a completely new project from scratch?
Yeah, I would say past performance. So, right now, like, so say you start in like a game of basketball, right? Like if you like, the first time you're coming into the game, you just start throwing up like 3-point shots. Like folks are gonna be disappointed if you start missing them, right? But if you initially just focus on the layups, right, and like you've like slammed like 90% success rate on the layups, and then over time you've built credibility and you start taking some further and further jump shots, and you go to the 3-point and then maybe the half court shot. It's a different response if you miss because you've already proved credibility. So we're not doing anything new as far as like new channels right now because like we're just getting started. So we want to get the wins that we have higher confidence in, and then over time move to deeper and deeper moonshots. But getting the wins first on the things where we think like, hey, this is a good shot at succeeding. Getting a few of those, showing the past performance, and then asking for the permission to take the 3-point shot. That's what we're doing.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And I guess like sometimes we do have like an army inside here that we help companies build their growth operations, and everyone is normally so excited to get to the riskiest ideas, the most challenge project, something that is gonna revolutionize the world. But at first, we usually recommend get your small wins on the pocket, build confidence, get company buy-in, and then you move ahead to more challenging projects that you have more room to take risks and sometimes to fail along the way. You're not gonna get burned, but you do need to get your small wins first, like build the confidence, as you said.
Oh yeah. And I love moonshots. I'm a moonshot guy, but I've also been at GitHub long enough to just know like how to play the game, right? It's like
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
some wins, get some credibility, you get more people, and then you can allocate a percentage of those folks to moonshots while also having the steady baseline. But if you come out swinging, initially, you might not have that
Yeah.
team, like a few months from there.
Yeah. I would go as far as to say that that's not something only for GitHub, but should
Yeah,
be like a universal truth of some kind.
yeah.
Awesome. And so Daniel Marquez actually asked, like, what advice would you give to professional aspiring to build a career in growth hacking or in product-led growth, based on your own experiences and learning?
Yeah, yeah. Be insanely curious, like read a lot, learn a lot. I mentioned about kind of being a generalist. It's
Yeah,
super helpful. Listen to a lot. There's so many materials out there, podcasts, books, Reforge, Growth Hackers, and LinkedIn, right? You can follow like Elena Verna on LinkedIn. Like if you're
yeah, she's
curious,
amazing.
you're just like very passionate about like just learning what people have to like their ideas they have to share. It's just like a million times more helpful than if you're just in it for like the prestige, whatever it may be. It's like the more you can make yourself a generalist, the better. Because then you can like pivot between talking about like ARR versus like basic signups or activation or acquisition, and you have like some sense of like how business works and like how people think. Reading about like psychology, reading about data, reading about like engineering, like playing with code, like seeing these
Yeah.
AI tools coming out and like giving them a spin. Like all these things start to compound, and I think growth folks should be generalists who have skill sets and understand business that helps them kind of like function in that role.
I love that. I love that. It reminded me of like another AMA session that we had, and he mentioned like the two skill sets that you do that he was not totally sure that you could build, but kind of like you need to have is being curious enough to kind of like dig deeper in every problem and trying to find a solution. So being curious and also being comfortable whenever you're not right, because you're not going to be right a lot of times. So
Yeah,
uh, and
yeah.
that leads me to like one connected question from me again, which is like, how does like GitHub, what is the tolerance from the rest of the team whenever like something doesn't work out as planned in terms of an experimentation? So if an experiment didn't work out as initially expected, is it okay? Like how does that play out inside of GitHub?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the leader, and in this case, it happens to
Yeah.
be me. And like, I love shots on goal, right? So like, my mentality is like, hey, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So like, take as many shots as possible, and you either like hit the shot or you learn something. So like, every experiment's a win if you do it right. And so, high failure tolerance. I'm a huge fan of like, take the shot, take the shot, take the shot. Like, when in doubt, take the shot, right? And sometimes they land, and you learn something. Sometimes like they don't land and just like review it and you still learn something.
Yeah.
So really high, examples like I mentioned, we shipped those two A/B tests and we just like did them incorrectly, right? So like none of the data come in. Like one like only shipped for like GitHub staff, which obviously isn't helpful if you're trying to like
Yeah.
figure out how it impacts customer acquisition. But we learned there was just like a flag we didn't know about, and now we do. So that's amazing. So next time we're just not going to make that mistake, right? You make it again, it's a different conversation, right? But we're just going to document it, and hopefully we don't.
Yeah, I love that. I think it was Jeff Bezos that said like Amazon is a function of how many experiments they run per day,
Yeah.
per week, per month, per year. And if you're running an experiment, like by definition, you cannot know the end result. So
Yep.
there is a risk that it's kind of included on the name itself. So nice. I'm seeing like some names from the questions on the chat. So I just want to shout out to people. We have people from Washington, from Switzerland, from the Caribbean, Nigeria, Brazil, so Boston, so all over the place, all over the planet. So welcome everyone. Nice
I
to see
love it.
everyone here.
Yeah, the name Chiedo is actually Nigerian. So my parents are Sierra Leonean, but I did one of those like 23andMe tests, and like my DNA is like
Yeah.
99% Nigerian or something. So shout out to
Okay.
Nigeria.
Amazing. Cool. We got one from Johan Frederickson, which is, can you share an experience with you putting together your first ever growth team? How has this changed over time? And what would your main advice be for someone tasked with hiring and managing growth for the first time. So I know that you build multiple teams. You probably have a lot of share of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it's been so hard. But my advice, it goes back to that generalist thing. Like, you have to be a generalist who can who loves learning and can get your feet wet. So prior to this role, like, I didn't know anything about like data analysis. Like, I had like been a database administrator in the past, and I had written SQL queries, but like I never like queried a data warehouse. I didn't even really know like where to find it, right? And so, but in this role, like, we found ourselves with that need, and so I've had to roll up my sleeves and like learn how to like write
Yeah.
these queries myself, like learn statistics, the thing I didn't pay attention to in school, right? And like go back to the drawing board and a lot of things, just like get my feet wet. So advice wise, I wouldn't recommend anyone go start a growth team if they don't like getting their hands dirty and aren't comfortable like with high stakes doing things themselves versus like delegate. Like, they're leaders who can delegate but don't know how to like implement, and they're leaders who can do both. So I can toggle. It's not sustainable long term, but like, I'm a great proof of concept MVP guy. Like, I can get you to like from 0 to 80% any day. 80 to 100%, you need to bring someone else on. So it's been hard because you get the job, and then like a few days later, like a VP is like, "Hey, what are your goals?" And it's like, well, like I don't know I don't even know where to find the data, right? And so like you end up with things like putting goals into the planner, where like instead of saying like, "Hey, our goals are 1,000% like increase," or whatever, you just say like X% increase. And like,
Yeah.
like no one like questions you on that, and say like, "Hey, to be continued." And then you need to be like deeply relational, right? Like, once again, it was like I came into this role with like an area of responsibility. I had to come up with my own goals, and I had no authority over anyone, right? So I had to go like
Yeah. Yeah.
talk to connections and like sell them on this thing, and like be really strategic and thoughtful. Like, there are different goals I could have chosen, a different area of responsibilities I could have chosen, but I chose one that I knew folks had a lot of interest in various teams that I could sell, right? Like, there's no point in like trying to go for the goal that you can't sell, because then you're on your own.
Yeah.
So you've got to be scrappy. It's way easier if you've been in the roles you're hiring for. So I've been an engineer, I've been an engineering manager, I've been a a product manager, haven't been a data analyst. I guess I have now, right? And so like all these
Yeah.
things help. Like, if you've been in the role, it helps. And then like optimize for shots on goal and like learning as fast as quickly. So when I started this team, the engineers who I was working with in the past in a different capacity were working 2-week sprints, which made like a lot of sense for what we were doing before, like moving like big systems from like A to B, these kind of like super
Yeah.
long projects that take like lots of time and are gnarly and have these like huge steps where like you can't just like ship something quickly and see if it works. You've got these huge plans. To this, it's like, okay, let's move to 1-week sprints. You move to 1-week sprints. You create this healthy pressure where it's like, because every Monday you're going to be asking yourself, like, what did we do last week, right? And when Monday starts, like, when like as soon as you get out of like the planning meeting, you're already saying like, I've only got like 4 more days to like get something done. So like you come in a Tuesday with a little bit more pep in your step versus you have 2-week sprints. It's like, I might not make progress this week. We've got like another week to like catch up. And even when things fall behind, right? Like, it still helps us kind of like keep honest with like the
Yeah.
velocity we're setting and whether or not we actually delivered on what we intended to. Because you've got to think about it in chunks. If we're thinking in like quarters, that's like 12 sprints if you have 1-week sprints. If you have 2-week sprints, you only have 6 chunks, right? And if you only have like 6 shots to take and you miss 2, it's like, when you only have 4 shots to take. If you have 12 shots to take with 1-week sprints and you miss 2, you still got 10 left, right? So like all
Yeah.
these things, especially with a new team, helps and helps you make a huge difference.
I love it. Love it. That's a precious advice. So another one that we have, let me take one. Okay, so Federica Potena actually asked, GitHub is a well-established platform. How do you maintain a sense of growth and innovation within the product and user base? I feel like Copilot's already a revolution in itself, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are
so
a few ways. One way is,
sorry, go
you hear
ahead.
me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I was a little bit of a delay. Yeah, there are a few ways. One way is, I mean, GitHub is naturally a very innovative company. We attract the most innovative software developers in the world. So, like that's actually not the tension, right? Like the tension is like folks always want to innovate, and the tension is how do we kind of like just make sure we continue to do our excellent craft on maybe like the less sexy work and like keep our eyes on the ball for the things that just need a little bit more tender loving care. So like the culture of innovation is the default at GitHub. But in addition to that, we also have like a team called GitHub Next, right? Where like their folks were like, their job is to innovate. And that's where like Copilot came out of. So when we were
Cool.
working on like GitHub today, GitHub Next was working on Copilot, right? And now Copilot's
Nice.
like right in front of us. And now they're working on like whatever the next thing is, right? Things I can't talk about. But so we have like just a default culture of innovation. And then we also
Yeah.
have like dedicated teams who go for like these like huge kind of like big bets over like 2-5 year horizons, who aren't thinking about GitHub today. They're explicitly thinking about GitHub tomorrow.
Love it. Love that. Very nice. So it's called GitHub Next. It's kind of
Yeah.
like an innovation team. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. We got one question from Lance Franklin, which is also connected with your other kind of like, don't know if you can call it side job because it does seems like a lot of work, but can you tell us a little bit more about Rocktown? And his question actually is like, what are some key lessons you have learned from your experience as a VC investor, and that you believe are kind of like valuable for growth professionals in general?
Yeah, yeah. So it's funny to think about it as a side job because it's like the opposite. Like I'm paying others to do this work. So like I'm investing in companies and I'm like losing money to like spend this extra time doing stuff. But no, it's amazing. And one of the reasons I like doing it is because I'm getting to stay sharp and challenge myself and learn about kind of like new aspects of business. And I get to learn about what the future is going to be before it gets here. Because
Yeah,
whenever you're investing in startups at the pre-seed stage, it's usually like before they have revenue, right? Sometimes before they have a product, you're talking to the folks who are building the products and the services that people are going to be using 5-6 years from now at scale.
yeah.
So you're working with like the Netflix and the Googles before anyone knows about them. So I love it. It gives me like a unique insight to like where the world might go.
Mhm.
And every startup I'm talking to is kind of heavily focused on kind of like two things: product market fit, like how do they convince or how do they get alignment with the users, right? And make sure they create something that truly solves a problem that like users just like want so badly, right? And it has like market
Yeah,
pull where folks are like, hey, give me more, give me more. Or growth as they get a little bit later down the run. Like once they find product market fit, it's okay, how do they grow their business and get more customers and get more customers? So I think in a general sense, it just helps me develop my what's it called? Like my gut, right? Like my instinct, because I'm just repping through so many different founder pitches and pitch decks. I do them really fast, right? But I'm like getting the review like 15 like startup pitch decks like a week. And so it like helps develop that like that intuition that helps me in this current role. So it's super fun. Yeah, I tell folks like anyone can do it. Like if folks love startups, like hit me up. Like it's fun. It's fun.
yeah.
You get to learn a lot. You get to build your network. I think it makes me better at my growth job. And I just have a blast like hanging out with like the people who like want to change the world and believe they can. Like the two types of people, right? There are people who like complain about the world. Like that's fine. Like you're gonna have those kind of people. And then people who like think, hey, how might we improve the world and go do it? And like I love hanging out with those folks. And like that's what you get to do when you're in the angel investor space.
Amazing. So you guys are investing in any specific space, or like it is early stage, so people trying to find product market fit. So on the early stage of the startup, is there any specific industry or country that people should be aware of?
No. It's so primarily US right now, maybe the UK, but that's just based on usually I like to invest in countries where I've been, where I understand the culture, right? Like I think
Yeah,
it's a little bit risky to invest. We just don't understand like I don't understand the market dynamics of like even the UK really, because like I was born there, but I haven't been there. Like I visit like every now and then, but like I'm really comfortable in the US because I understand like the regulatory bodies and like the various forces that are moving, like how people think about business and life and whatnot. And then specifically staying involved in kind of like tech. So high preference to SaaS, just because like I've been in that space. But really just trying to look at companies who are kind of like changing paradigms and like trying to change the way people do things, and just like seeing something that makes no sense. Like example, back in the day, when you wanted to get a ride for a taxi, you would like stand in the rain and like wave, get splashed on until like somebody like finally stopped for you. And like Uber was like, we all know that sucks, so let's change it, right? So I love investing in companies who like they see paradigms that suck, but they're normal and default, and they think like, how do we change that? And then I just invest with like a bunch of folks who are like-minded. So like there's like I have a group, there's like no fees or anything, just tech leaders and folks who want to get in the startup game. They hit me up, they join, and like we just invest together. We talk about deals together. We analyze DAX and opportunities together. And I'm just learning so much and connecting with really cool people.
It does sound a lot of fun. Cool.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna open up to a few questions from the audience. Previously, I have been asking questions from people who submitted through the landing page and signed up for these. So now I'm gonna open up for the people in the chat. So feel free to type in your question. I'm gonna take one from Miko Yuk, which is, and I know there's a line that you probably cannot cross in terms of like publicly sharing information, but her question is, can you share like at least one of the most successful experiment that you might have done at GitHub that maybe caused a big impact or that was appraised from others, and of course respecting the limit of sharing the information.
Yeah, I want to tell you like, heck yeah, I can. But as I mentioned, the experiments we shipped so far this quarter have we both ran them incorrectly. So we haven't been able to interpret them. We have the one right on the pricing page, but like you can go see it. Like it's no secret. GitHub.com/features/pricing. Visit that like a few times. You got to be logged in if you have like friends or whatever. And then you'll see the two versions of that page. And so, I mean, if you want to see like the control, just visit it logged out, and I'll show you the control. So that looks like it's been a pretty awesome improvement. But I think like one more day to measure the results because we have like a holiday and whatnot and a weekend in the past few days. And so, but it looks pretty promising.
Cool. I got one from Josh Ford. What are the best work environment to find on the job mentorship for growth teams?
Okay, what are the best work environments to find on the job mentorship for growth teams? Could you rephrase a little bit? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, so Josh, can you help us out? And in the meantime, I'm gonna get another one, which is, could you share some advice on structuring an acquisition team?
Yeah, for sure. I can share some advice. This is like I've done it one way, so like I'm incredibly biased. I think it's really helpful to be kind of in the marketing org because the marketers are focused on acquisition specifically. So you get a lot of support around things like getting budget for paid media because we have that as like a lever we can pull. We have an advertising budget that, like, if you're on a product growth team, you might it's just a different paradigm, right? Like product manager orgs are not used to generally like spending a bunch of money on like advertising. It's not how they think about like their budget. So being in marketing org, I'm a fan of it. Yeah, I mean, you want a data analyst, extremely important, because you need to be able to not just think about like engagement metrics. Like, product growth team might focus more on like engagement and retention. When you're on the marketing team, like you've got like to think about things like customer acquisition costs and like lifetime value. So you want to have a partnership with a data analyst, with finance, of course, a designer who can think end to end, engineers. I think you have those things, like should be good. And then of course, like, product manager or two, depending on like how many initiatives you have. But I think generally like one product manager to like 3 to 4 engineers is like a good ratio.
Cool. I agree with you.
Reminder, I'm hiring. So like, seriously, like, we're trying to move fast. So like, if anyone's interested, it's like, yo, I'd love to be like an engineer on that team or a product manager. Just like hit me up on LinkedIn and just like put in the note, like GrowthHackers, and I'll give you some context.
Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, folks, there are open positions to to report directly to Chiedo. So that's a nice one. We got one last from Patrick. We're almost over our time here, but Patrick asked, where do you see the future of growth hacking? You might even mention AI on that. Nice touch, Patrick.
Yeah, I don't know. Gosh, I don't know. I do. So here's the way I think about like AI specifically. I think computers historically have been very amazing at specialization, and humans are really good at being generalists. So when I think about where AI is heading, I think about growth. I think growth hacking is very much like a generalist skill set. It's kind of like if you ask ChatGPT, like just some general question, like they'll just like botch really like ridiculous things that like are very obvious to like anyone who like understands like a general view of the world. But if you ask ChatGPT something like really specific, like 1+1, it usually gets it right. And computers are kind of like that. So I'm actually not too worried about growth hacking as far as the future and AI. I think growth hackers will use AI to help
Yep.
kind of like analyze data, interpret data, find insights, process user research, and maybe even like suggest like variations for A/B tests. But I think it's such a generalist like skill set where you have to understand so many contexts that my bet is kind of really specific functions that are like very specialized are kind of things that AI would be kind of more apt and computers in general to tackle than something this general.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with you. It's not, I don't think that's the type of thing that you can run away from. So you gotta face it face to face. So I guess like Josh rephrased his question. I'm looking to transition away from being a director of a one-man marketing and growth team at a company, an SMB. So any insights on team types that would be a good fit for someone with his skill sets and who is looking for that transition? Thanks, Josh.
Yeah. So I made a similar transition when I was running my company. I was the CEO of a 20-person company, right? And so I had to like have this moment of humility when I considered what it looked like to go to a company like GitHub, because I wasn't going to be the CEO, right? Unless something really weird happened,
Not
right? And
yet.
so, yeah. So when I think about kind of making moves from kind of like super small companies, like king of the small company, you're usually going to go and like be like a knight in like a big company. And I think that's really helpful because, when I came to GitHub, I just didn't know like how the machine ran. I didn't know like how these different functions like ran at scale, how you thought about budget, how you thought about hiring. And you need to develop that muscle. So I would try and find like a role at like a company like GitHub. I'm hiring to be like a head of like, just like a product manager for like a growth team. And I think that there's no shame in that whatsoever, like losing that director title. I think being a product manager at a growth team at a really big company will give you lots of insight. And then over time, like maybe you can get promoted, but maybe you won't want to, right? Things are just different at really big companies, and there's a lot of opportunity for impact. And it's kind of cool how much you can do when you have like just like all this data, or you got all this data, right? Like you got all this like scale, all these visitors. They're just like things you just can't do when you have like a team of like one with like a website that gets like 1,000 visitors a month versus like we get millions. It's like, okay, we can do all sorts of A/B tests and experiments and like and actually see the results within like weeks, not years.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like the perfect playground for a group position. So one last question. We got 2 minutes left for entry level folks. How can you be a generalist and land a job when most recruiters are after folks who have a specific skill set?
Yeah, that's actually that's a good question. So I so for entry level roles, I think you should actually try and be specific. Like if you're just getting started, I think the generalist guidance appeals more to kind of like a leadership role, with the ability to go like specific in like multiple roles as needed. But like if you're coming in as like you want to be a growth engineer, ideally like you've worked in a growth engineering role. And I know it's kind of like cat or mouse. One way to kind of like jumpstart that and break the cycle is like go work for a startup. Like a startup will hire someone with like no experience. And even if you're not getting paid that much, I call it compounding experience. Like when you're trying to get that
Nice.
first entry level role, like don't optimize for the salary, right? Like it's like if you can get that experience early, right? And now you're a person who isn't entry level. Now you're a person who was a growth engineer for 5 years, or 2 years or whatever it may be. Like now you can go get that like that big role where you get paid a lot. And that's going to compound over like the rest of your career. So
Yeah.
if you're entry level, like try and be specific. Try like don't optimize for salary, just try and like optimize for getting experience like under someone else's like tutelage, and then use that over time to like become more of a generalist. Because once you get into the specific role, especially at a startup, they're going to ask you to do everything else that's not your job because they always need more people.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing. So take it when you can get it. And that's what I did with my transition to product management. I was a director of engineering. I wanted a product management skill set. And so like I was an intern, right? An unpaid intern, for an extra job under, the head of product. And I got to learn a lot. And now I'm compounding and building on that right now.
Love it. All right. So I think we're already over our time, but I just want to say thank you so much. This has been super insightful, Chiedo. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. So it has been a pleasure to host you today. Any last words that you want to share with the audience?
I'm hiring. Hit me up. Yeah, and if you want to get involved in angel investing, hit me up there as well. I'm on LinkedIn. Just put in GrowthHackers so I know it's you.
Sounds good, Chiedo. Thank you again, man. Take care. Have a great one.
Yeah, thanks,
Bye.
Pedro. This rocked.
Bye.